In the last video, you showed me, or I showed you how I got the shaft out of here. And what I actually ended up doing was just making a whole lot of extra work for myself. Because on the Shopsmith forum, somebody pointed out to, or JPG pointed out to me that all I had to do is drive that set pin all the way in and it'd come out. And it did. So now I've got to clean these up and I'll use a little bit of JB Weld on that to fill in those scratches. And then I'll have to find a new shaft. So luckily I was able to finally sign up on the forum and was able to ask questions, and people were very helpful. So at least I got that done. I think I'll be able to recover from that and use the original castings. So next on the list here, I'm out at the shop today. Probably the next thing I need to do is just start doing some media blasting. Well, I think it turned out really good. So we got most of this stuff done. I am going to get some of the other cast parts and media blast those so I can paint those soon, and we'll keep soldiering on. Okay, here we are creating our tube to drop our wade tubes and base tubes in and then we're putting our Rust 911 remover. So this is, I put a regular end on it there, and then I got a cap that will go up here, and I cut that at 54 inches, and here's a tube I'm going to set inside the wade tubes. And what I ended up doing, because a regular cap, I got a regular PVC cap and put it on there, it wouldn't be able to fit inside the wade tubes and base tubes. So I 3D printed this using PETG, and from what I read, we should be able to, and we're going to try it, use PVC glue to glue that in there. So let me get that, which I've already done on that end, and now I'll do the other end. Okay, now I've got the first base tube in there, then I got the center tube inside there, and I've got that high enough so I can pull it out, but I don't have this so deep that I can't pull that out. So now I'll pour in some Rust 911 in there and put a cap on it, and we'll let it sit overnight. Okay, this is the reason I made that tube longer, is when you fill it up, it's going to shove that tube out. So by making it longer, I can use the cap to hold that tube down on the inside in there. And mainly what that tube on the inside in is so that you're not using so much of the Rust 911 or Evapor Rust. So we got that there. We're going to sit it over in the corner over here, and we'll let that sit overnight. We'll let that sit overnight and see what happens. In anticipation of turning the base tubes and the wade tubes over to clean them up, what I've done here is I've printed out a bearing holder that holds a 608Z bearing, and then this little stand that you can snap that into, and then I put some 3mm screws in here to hold that in place. And then I'll show you here in a minute how I'm going to mount the tubes in here. And then I'll hook a drill on one end of it and spin it to remove paint and, on the base tubes, and then to polish the way tubes up. Alright, here we are after letting the first base tube soak overnight in our Rust 911. Let's take the top off of this. I have to unscrew that. I'll take the top off. We'll see how it did. Okay, there it is with the top off. We'll pull the 1-inch center tube out of here in a minute, and then I'll reach down in there and grab the base tube. Okay, there's the base tube. I think I'm going to let it soak a little bit longer. See what happens. That's after about 12 hours. Okay, I changed my mind a little bit. Before I put it in to soak for a little while longer, I went ahead and took it out and hosed it off. So now I'm going to put it back in. It's doing its job. You can see it's more or less removing the rust, and I don't know if that's a primer coat that's under the silver or what, but anyway, we'll let it soak for a few more hours. To hold the bearing and the bearing holder into the mount that I made, I'm just using, let me see, 12 millimeter 3 millimeter screws. So I just put them in there, put the nut on the back, and crank it up. Somehow I'd lost the previous videos, but I wanted to show you what the top came out looking like after I polished it with the Mother's Mag polish. I'm pretty happy with this. On the back side, I went ahead and media blasted it. So it's, you know, all the corrosion's gone. I still have to wax it, both the top and the bottom. The other thing that I usually do is chase the threads, clean that out, and then it should be done. In the meantime, I started working on the fence. Here you can tell the difference. I went ahead and, instead of using the Brasso and the Scotch-Brite pad, I went ahead and media blasted this, both the inside and the outside. Here, I don't know if you can, if it shows up very well on the camera, but I've polished this side and I still have to polish this side. It looks pretty good. I have polished this side, and this is a little bit, takes a little bit more work. Let me see. I don't know if I can get in there, but you can see the machining. And maybe you can't. I don't know if I can get it focused enough, but there's machining in here. And so when I polish it, I've got to be careful that I remove all the polish out of the grooves that are in there. This side has not been polished yet. So if I, let me do this. Here's the top. I did not, of the saw, I did not, I used Scotch-Brite and Brasso on that. And, oops, there is the top of the fence, which I did media blast that and then polish it. I think I get a little bit better finish by using the Scotch-Brite pads and the Brasso, and then the Mother's Mag cleaner, or polish on this. This stuff, Mother's Mag and aluminum polish. So I'm okay with media blasting the back because I'm not going to try to polish that up. I just wanted to get the corrosion off of it. But I think on the shiny surfaces, or stick with the Scotch-Brite pad and Brasso. Now I've cleaned this up, but after this is the accessory extension table. I went ahead and I taped this up, and I went ahead and media blasted the underside, and my tape was a little loose here, so I've got to come back and repolish it with the mag polish. And basically all I do, right or wrong, is put a little mag polish on these bamboo paper towels. Now I just run it in circles, and then I take another paper towel, these bamboo paper towels, and wipe them off. And there you have it. Got my shine back. Now, when I cleaned these out, what I did is I took a Dremel with a narrow buffing pad, and I ran it down the grooves. Got that cleaned up. And I had taped that before, and then the other thing that I used to clean, and then I used the paper towel again, buffed it out. The other thing I did where I couldn't get in there real well, I used a good old-fashioned pipe cleaner. Clean that out. So I got a spot up here that a couple spots here I need to touch up, and then this is ready for waxing. Just for perspective, here's the original table saw insert I got with the Shopsmith. I purchased this molding insert, and it hasn't been touched yet. So that shows you the difference after they've been cleaned and polished. Again, this has been media blasted, and this hasn't. So, or take that out, media blast that, come back, hit this with Brasso, and then the Mother's Mag polish, aluminum polish. And they should both look really good. Alright, here's the first way tube after being cleaned off with the Contour SCT by Eastwood. First we used the 40 grit, then the medium one, and then I hooked up the drill and hit it with 320 grit paper and some 400 grit paper. It's not perfect, but I think that's about as good as we're going to get it without having somebody turn it down in a lathe, and obviously we don't want to do that. But sure looks a lot shinier than it did. And here's the mechanism I did with made up. Just went out to Menards, and this is actually an auto. They call it an auto repair plug. You can get them at O'Reilly's and AutoZone and Napa. I just had to put an extended length bolt in it. And anyway, got it all shined up and cleaned up. We just got to do the other way tube, and then we're work on the base tubes. Okay, I've got the other way tube, or one of the way tubes, jigged up, my little roller assembly. This is the extent of what the rust looks like after it's soaked for a while. It took in the Rust 911. It took a lot of it off. What we're going to do now is we're going to fire this up, and I'll try to hold it with one hand, but I'll probably have to only do it for a little bit. But I've got the Contour SCT. By the way, you can buy a knockoff of these at Harbor Freight. I've got it clear down low, but boy, it's tough to do this with one hand, or try. But what you want to do is you want to go horizontally, but not quite horizontally. If you go horizontally, it'll just stop, but you can control the speed of the spin depending on the angle. See, and if I go horizontally, it'll come to a stop. The more angle I go, the faster it'll go. And obviously we don't want it going that fast. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and with the 60 grit, and then we'll move to the finer grit, which unfortunately it's not marked on there. Oops, unfortunately it's not marked on there, so I can't tell you what grit that is. I think it's like 120. All right, here we are after using both of the drums on the Contour SCT. You can see it pretty much removes the rust. You know, about as well as you can do, but of course now I've got horizontal scratches. So that's where we go to our 320 and our 400. And to do that, I will mount this up on here and spin it and run the sandpaper across it. This is what it looks like after hitting it with the 320. One thing is when you put the opening for the bearing to the inside to keep that bearing from coming out. Okay, that's the last one after the 400 grit sandpaper. I think that's about as good as I'm going to get it. And I got a little bit of cross hatching on it, so the clamp should clamp on there. There they are. There's the base tubes. Got to paint them yet. Here's the way tubes. Got to wax them yet. But before I do that, I'm going to do one more thing. In an attempt to keep the insides of the tubes from rusting, I have some of this Eastwood internal frame coating. Comes with a long tube with a nozzle on it. This is green. I've had this sitting on the shelf for a long time. So what I'm going to attempt to do, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to shove that down there and spray this from both directions. I've covered the end of the tube and extended it a little bit further in an attempt to hope that I don't get too much overspray when I'm pulling the tube out, or the nozzle out. So we'll go ahead and do that, and hopefully that's successful. I'll do all 4 tubes, let it dry, and then I will wax the way tubes and paint the base tubes since they were painted on this model. They're all sprayed inside. Took me almost exactly 1 can of that. I've got them sitting out here in the hot Nebraska sun cooking off. As soon as they get done drying for a little bit, our take the tape off and see how much overspray on the ends I've got to remove, but I didn't get any on the rest of it. Not sure how well it's picking it up, but there's what it looks like. I just got a little bit of overspray that I'm going to have to take off the ends of a couple of them. But that stuff should, yeah, you're not going to be able to see it, but you can see that it's green. You can get them, I'm pretty sure, in black or gray. I can't remember which, but hopefully that'll keep it from rusting. I have the arm base, an arm, media blasted. Probably do a little bit more on the base, and so the next step will be to put a couple coats of primer on that. And then if I remember right, we use the copper on that part. If you notice where I cut the pin out, there's just a little scratch there. I thought about filling that up with JB Weld, but I don't see the point at this time. And for those reference in the future, to get that pin out, if I would have been smart, I would have seen that there's a hole down here. Let's see if I can get on there. That pin just shoves out the back side. So I just created a lot more work for myself, but we'll recover. We always do. So hopefully the next time you see these, well, I'll show it to you after I get the primer on it, and then I'll show it to you after I get the Rustoleum on it. Let me see if I've got there are my parts. See if I can get this. I haven't media blasted yet, but it's not too far off. And the gold here's a tailstock that I was able to find for it. The gold's pretty close in color too. I mean, it is what it is. Since Rustoleum discontinued their oatmeal, so we're move forward. Now I'm going to use my spin stand to paint the base bars. Of course, when I was taking it around the corner of the house, I caught it, broke that off, so I'm in the process of printing a replacement right now. To clean up the shaft that came out of the fence, I just checked it up in the old drill. Took a green Scotch-Brite pad with some Brasso, ran it across there a few times, and then I finished the polish off with a red Scotch-Brite pad, and it looks actually pretty good. So I'll probably hit that with a little bit of wax before I put it back to, keep it from rusting before I put it back together.